back to Thrive Time with Jay Mamie.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Jay Mamie Talk Show. On the line right now, I'm thrilled to introduce to you Lisa Cavallo. She is our business spotlight for the show. And guys, you know that I only bring individuals on the show that I believe are making an impact in a certain way to a community as part of an organization that are really looking to have others experience thriving in their life. And that's why Lisa Cavallo, she's on the show with us today. Not only is she a mortgage advisor, she's a real estate agent, she's an investor, but she's also someone involved in expanding and growing and developing and building a community. She's got a very excellent, different message, and I wanted her to share her story with you guys today as our business spotlight. So, Lisa, welcome to the show.
Hi, Jay. Thank you so much for having me.
Lisa, before we dive into all the good things you've got to share, I know you've got a lot going on. Can you share a little bit about your story with our listening audience?
Well, I come from a humble beginning and was taught that hard work and perseverance will get you a long way. And actually, I'm a product from the 80s. So I grew up in a time when there was latchkey kids and had a single mother who I learned that, hard work was really important, and basically learned a lot of self-discipline while I was there by myself, doing things for myself. And in addition, I had an upbringing where an influence through my grandparents taught me the core values of, their era was war and depression, and they really ingrained in me that savings was so important that it's just become a fundamental of one of my core values. And as I progressed in my profession, I began working in banks and started to teach classes for first-time home buyers. I had a pretty good job, and I had the ability to travel around the world, and I think that in those experiences, I was able to learn about other individuals and give back to them and see how different segments of our community and other communities come together and work in harmony.
Yeah, one of the things that impresses me about my guests when I have a chance to interview them is that there's always a root that goes all the way back to childhood that is part of who they are today, whether they are modeling someone else, parents or grandparents, or whether they're picking up nuances of good habits by watching others do it. It's so critical, us as adults and as parents, to be mindful that there's always someone, a little person watching us. And in this case, the lesson of savings you learned from your grandparents, and it's molded you and it's crafted you, and it's your message today, 20, 30 years later, and it's probably going to be your message moving forward, and that's why you're impacting people. And you really are doing great things for those that are interested in following in the same footsteps. But what inspired you to dedicate your life to empowering others?
Well, as I progressed in my career, I was able to, get into real estate, and eventually I became a real estate broker and investor. And it was a progressive move, but I think that what basically shaped my vision was seeming, since I was from a humble beginning and traveling, I was able to see how other people's lives were. And in that, I realized that I did not have to have any insecurities about financial freedom. Those lessons that were taught to me as a young child on how all the things we didn't have came to light in a new vision when I was able to travel and see the world. And I was able to simulate that life could be better than where I stood at that moment.
So it was watching others, seeing others experiencing a better quality of life that you realized that such a thing does exist. And just because you grew up in humble beginnings doesn't mean that it has to be your future, because if others are seeing success and others are having success and are living a better quality of life, then that better quality of life is available for everybody, not just for the select. And I gather that's what really helped you understand that this message has to be shared with others. Is that about right?
Exactly. And that's where I got the idea of empowering other individuals to be their best and to overcome any obstacles that they may have had previously.
Part of living a life that is less than your potential, experiencing a life that could be your best life, whether it's financially, whether it's in your health, your fitness, in your family, your relationships, part of living that kind of life And the reason why rather folks don't is because they're missing information. They're lacking understanding. Where do you find that most people that you help and are working with have the greatest knowledge deficiency?
That's a really great question. I believe that the hardest part for people to assimilate or overcome would be a debt management side. And when I say that, it ties in so closely with cash flow. So we get caught up in our society of a credit society where things are borrowed and minimal amounts are repaid. And eventually what tends to happen is people get into this leveraging mode and they forget about accumulating savings, like a backup or a cushion or a life event that could happen. And they don't have anything to fall back on. So I think that the majority of my teachings would be to empower those individuals to have a savings, build a nest egg, just like those principles I was taught when I was younger.
You know, one of the things that I've learned, because I grew up in Spanish Harlem, Lisa, in New York, and, you know, growing up in the 70s and the 80s, you don't have examples, vivid examples of anyone who had implemented the kind of knowledge that you're teaching. I just didn't see any of that. But I knew along the way that if you learn the right information, if you're taught the right principles, and if you apply them, which is the key, and I'm sure you'd agree with that, it's applying what you learned. You can change the trajectory of your life and your kids' life and generations to come if you get the knowledge, but then you have to apply the knowledge, which I think is another area where people become deficient. They don't understand the application of the knowledge. So it really is a 1-2 punch. But in your experience and your observations, being very active in the community, what have you found have been some of the positive testimonials? What are some of your positive testimonials from your efforts to empower others, especially in the Latino community?
Well, one of the things I've done over my career, having been in this industry now over 25 years, is not only help initial individuals build their wealth and have success through homeownership, but been able to also help their children. And it's great when you have these long-term relationships with individuals and you see how well they're doing, and you can pass that off to their offspring, and they're passing that off to their offspring. And it's an amazing cycle of life when you're able to give so much back to other individuals that you relate with, and they relate with you, and you've been in their shoes, you know their travels, you know their struggles, you know how much they've gone through just to be where they are. And to see them grow and flourish is just so rewarding.
Now, one of the ways that you empower the Latino community, all communities, but specifically, I know you do a lot of work with the Latino community, is you often speak to them about being empowered through the ownership of real estate. Can you take a second to talk a little bit about why that's one of your most valuable priority messages to those you work with?
Absolutely. You know, my family has a really long-term history of being in their houses. We're not the type of individuals to change houses. As a matter of fact, my great-grandparents' house is still in our family. And that's been, almost 100 years now. So we're really, really solid, our foundation, you know. In regards to real estate, it's the number one wealth-building item that you can have for your family, especially with Latinos. You know, I do a lot of work, community work. I'm working with an organization that is NAREB and NAREB and all these other individuals that really support the minority and the growth and the ideas that, you know, when we come from a mindset that says, I can't, we give them the power and the encouragement to say, I can, and to see it happen. Come to fruition. It's just amazing. But, you know, they're able to, through home ownership, pass on that to their lineage and invest in themselves, and it creates stability in the family and a legacy for their children.
Yeah, I love that. You said that you give them the empowerment for them to say, I can. And, you know, there's something to be said about owning a home that gives you that sense of validation and self-worth to an extent. But it also confirms to you that I can do this, right? And the process that you go through to get to that place when someone hands you a key to your home, especially for those of us who are Latino, it's a big deal. So I can see why those with that that had that experience could be empowered by just owning a home, right? Something they can pass on to their kids. But what initiatives are you currently working on that are going to help continue to develop yourself and your message in a very crowded marketplace?
Great. So one of the things I'm doing is I'm switching to a video format. I went to a conference and I was able to see the CEO of Disney, and he came out to talk with us. And really what he did was said, my story is best told through video. And it gave me the idea that me, myself, am so much more than sometimes what my words can say. And so I'm putting a lot down in video, and I'm expanding at this time to other markets, starting a emerging developer organization that will challenge my next initiative, which is providing housing on a greater scale and relocating individuals who are being misplaced throughout the community through transportation and upgrades that are going on right now for infrastructure. And in addition to that, I'm working with a nonprofit called Slow in creating a magazine to get our message out about helping individuals, education, family, mortgage, housing, new construction, everything in one spot so that will be distributed to our community and also online.
Awesome. That sounds like a great project you're working on to definitely expand your message. Video is key. In our last minute here, I want to ask you two quick questions here. Number one, where could people find you? And number two, what can people expect to experience when they meet you in our last minute?
Great. So one of the things that I think they'll find is that I'm very relatable. And knowing me and seeing me in person, it's nothing to be intimidated about. I'm just a really easygoing person. The best way to find me is just give me a call. My number is 832-797-1594. You can call or text anytime, and you can also find me online under my name, Lisa Castro Carvalho. You can Google it, got a Google page, and you can find me on various sources online as well.
Well, Lisa, we appreciate you being on the show. Tremendous value adding to the community. Folks, we're going to have Lisa's information up on our website so you can track her down. And that wraps up another fantastic week of Thrive Minded Contact, folks. We're going to see you next Sunday on the Jay Mamie Talk Show.